First of all, our kindness zone signs. There have been a couple of interesting things. For those of you on YouTube particularly, I think you might enjoy these kindness signs. It was presented by the Pittsburgh mayor, and the mayor in Pittsburgh. I'm not laughing, I'm laughing at our camera person over there giving me directions on this over here. The mayor of Pittsburgh, after Squirrel Hill, the Jewish synagogue there, placed these signs in the city: be nice, kindness zone, all day, every day. And they really caught my attention. So we've duplicated these signs for yards, for businesses, for schools, any place else that people would enjoy them. So if you're interested in them, please let us know. Just give us a little hoot at nowcreations.org, and we'll make sure you get a copy of the sign. They're just wonderful. We have them on yard stands also, if you would like them as well. There was one other thing about the yard signs that I thought was quite interesting to me. In Pittsburgh, obviously they had the mass shooting there. And what was really interesting to me was the fact that when we went there last Sunday, so many people bought these signs. And, different people in different groups buy the signs and so on. But so many people there bought them. And I think really what it was that the people there just feel the heaviness of the situation, and kindness is a very important thing for all of them. So I just think it just kind of embellished a little bit of what they're about and what we're about as well. So I just want to mention that to you. And then the last thing that I want to mention, just kind of an interesting thing. 2 weeks ago in Indianapolis, we had two people there who were presenting some of their life dramas, situations, etc. And both of them articulated what I think is what many of us are doing now. We're learning, rather than getting caught in the dramas, we're learning to be able to kind of assay the situation, to see what's going on, and then rather than being reeled into the drama, we're able to step back, give meaning to what is occurring, and then go to that higher place within ourselves and respond from those higher, more universal principles. That ability to step back from the situation, see what is going on and give meaning to it, rather than allowing the situation to give meaning to you, and then being able to respond from those higher principles. This to me is what really all of us are about in life. So I want to give you kudos in your own lives for the things you're doing, and this ability to be able to see what's going on, to understand it, give meaning to it, and then respond from those higher principles. This is one of our goals. This is one of the things we most want to do, and it's a joy to see people accomplish it. So kudos to everyone. I think with that in mind, what we'd like to do then is to proceed on with our target area today. As we said, we've been trying to do some teachings in these Sunday presentations and so on. So what I'd like to do is to pass out a little something from a book that many of you perhaps knew at one time and perhaps still know, and that's Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Perhaps some of you have read the book. It came out in the late 1980s, I think 1988, and it's just a very, very interesting presentation. So let me just take a moment to go over it with you. This is a copy of the book itself, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's been a very, very interesting book, to say the least. My pages are all browned and so on in it, but it's the only book I've ever read 3 times, just to tell you that. I never read a book more than once. I maybe go back and peruse it, but I read the book 3 times because I felt the teachings in it were so good, and they really bear on what we want to present here today. So in your handout, you have a copy of Covey's 7 Habits. And we want to talk about the notion of taking good care of yourself. So let me take you through Covey's 7 Habits, then eventually we'll get into the teaching that I want to present to you. The first habit is being proactive. that your actions should be based on deeply held principles, not on moods, feelings, and circumstances. And I think we all understand the difference between being proactive, getting yourself in order, rather than being reactive, simply reacting to what's going on. And then secondly, begin with the end in mind to craft a personal mission statement that spells out the meaning, purpose, and direction of your life. All of your actions should flow from that statement. My presumption, most of us probably have done this at some time or another in our life. We've developed a personal mission statement. Organizations have them, but sometimes we don't have them, so to craft one is very important. And then the third, put first things first. Don't spend time on unimportant activities, no matter how urgent they may seem. Instead, focus on what's really important, work and activities that express your deepest values. So in these first three habits, what Covey did was he gave us what he called the formula for personal growth or personal independence. So in these 7 habits, he simply researched the 7 habits of highly effective people. The first 3 concern your personal growth. The second 3, numbers 4, 5, and 6, concern your interdependence or public growth. First of all, think win-win. Seek mutual benefit from all relationships. Number 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Listen to others' viewpoints before articulating your own. And lastly, synergize. Value and integrate different people's opinions and perspectives, even if you don't always agree with them when seeking solutions. So this is kind of the public discourse interdependence. So what was very interesting to me, Covey had 3 particular qualities for your personal growth and then 3 for interpersonal growth. But what I really want to talk about is the last of the 7 habits. And I just put my own little words there, tithing to oneself. Tithing to oneself. His 7th habit is to sharpen the saw. Take the time to care for your physical, mental, spiritual, and social health. I'm just going to read it again. Take the time to care for your physical, mental, spiritual, and social health. Well, when he presented this particular 7th habit, he told a little story. I have like 3 or 4 favorite stories in life, and one of Covey's is one of my favorite stories. And this was the story he told. He said that there was this guy was just kind of walking out in the fields one day, and he came across a farmer. And the farmer was out there, had an old tooth saw trying to cut the tree down. And the farmer's sawing away and sawing, and the passerby came and he said, looks like you're working hard. And the farmer said, sweating like a hog, out here doing all this work all day long. And the guy looked at him for a while, and he then said to the farmer, he said, you know, I have an idea. And the farmer said, well, what's that? And the guy said, well, if you took the time to sharpen your saw, you'd be able to cut the tree down more quickly. The farmer said, I can't do that. Can't you see I'm trying to cut the tree down? That's probably what happens to most people in life. We just don't take the time to sharpen our saws. We get so involved in this, that, and the other thing that we just don't take the time to renew ourselves physically, mentally, socially, and spiritually. And that's what I want to address today. But before we do even that, if you turn that paper over, on the back side of the paper, all kind of handouts over here today. On the back side of that paper, we have a quotation, a channel quotation by Jesus in a book called New Cells, New Bodies, and New Life, edited by Virginia Essene. And you can read the whole thing over by yourself, but I thought the 3rd paragraph was very, very interesting. Many of you do this already, namely getting your lives in order to maintain your sanity in a far too busy schedule. However, I also ask you to see how many hours you spend with caring and loving people and animals. How many hours are you out gardening, walking, or exercising in nature? And how often do you have experiences and activities that make your life meaningful, whether it be music, art, reading, or other joys? So it's quite obvious that Jesus giving channeled information is also talking about taking care of yourself. So that's what I'd like to do in today's talk, to encourage each one of us to take better care of ourselves. So with that in mind, let me just kind of give us our introduction and then proceed on to the talk. In last month's teaching, we were focusing on what we consider to be your greatest achievement. And what we addressed was the fact that for our greatest achievement, my suspicion is that it was not so much what any personal thing you did, but our greatest achievement is, rather than seeing ourselves simply as a limited human being, to truly begin to see ourselves as an eternal soul. This shift from limited human to eternal soul, I believe, is our greatest achievement, because it entails a change in your sense of self. We've seen ourselves, in a sense, go from only human to maybe more and more only divine. It's been a shift in our self-identity, and I think it's the most important thing, the greatest achievement that any of us have been able to achieve in our lives. And then we said, as the second part, that not only have individuals done this, but we've learned to do this together, that our greatest achievement is a group experience, that what Don has done, Tony has done, Jim has done, Pat has done, Patty has done, Nissy has done, and what I have done. We have a common achievement, so that each one of us, in a sense, is more and more seeing ourselves as a group of souls or as a family of souls. So what I'd like to do is to expand this teaching, namely entitled Tithing to Yourself. And what I would like to suggest is to explain how we have made this shift and why we will continue to make the shift. So let me begin. When I was first a philosophy student back in college, I had several favorite philosophers, and probably each one of us have had those people in life that have made a difference. Well, for me, Plato and Aristotle were my best buddies. They were just my best friends. But there was another philosopher that I really enjoyed, and his name was Immanuel Kant. Perhaps some of you might recall Immanuel Kant from an introduction to philosophy class. Well, what was very interesting about Immanuel Kant, for me anyways, was that he could be dealing with a very erudite subject, something like epistemology or even social philosophy. But the best thing about him was he would always be able to cut through the fluffy stuff and always get to the core of the matter. I love this about him. And particularly in the area of ethics or human behavior, Kant also was just one of those people who could just kind of look at something and he would always be able to get to the core issue. And getting into the core issue of human behavior, of human ethics, this seemed to me to be the most important thing in Kant's presentation. So Kant would say, well, it's really nice to develop a system of ethics, which he does, and which I personally follow still to this day. But he said that the most important thing about developing a system of ethics, the most important thing, which is always the core issue, is, does the person you're talking to want to do the right thing? Do you really want to do what is right? If you don't want to do what is right, no matter what you say, the person is not going to respond. You can have the greatest ethical system in the world, but until a person wants to do the right thing, it's not going to mean very much to them. So my suggestion is that our greatest accomplishment is that each one of us has wanted to do the right thing. We have changed from that limited human to seeing ourselves as that eternal soul because we've made the change at the core level of ourselves. Would you not say you've changed? You've evolved. You've become something different. You got down to that core issue when you said, I want to be better. I want to be into the fullness of what I'm capable of being. Even Jesus was very clear in this. He said, so many times the world is too much with us. The world, in a sense, gangs up on us, or we get imprisoned, and we just forget about the most important things in life, wanting to do that right thing at the very center of ourselves. Now, while we understand that each one of us is a work in progress, what I do want to suggest to you is there are 3 particular things that Immanuel Kant says, and that others have said as well, that are very important to us. But before we do that, I just want to mention one other thing. In the Course in Miracles, the Course in Miracles always gets down to that core issue as well. And in the Course in Miracles, it always says, you must be willing to follow the guidance of the Holy Spirit. The little willingness on your part will open you into a greater possibility. And I think that's what each one of us has done as well. There's been a willingness within us to follow the Spirit, so that for us to do the right thing is to follow that inner guidance, to follow that presence within us. And for many of us now, that inner guidance has really become kind of our GPS of life. It's the inner guide, it's the inner direction of our lives. Less and less are we involved with what is outside of us. Less and less are we pulled into the drama, because more and more we are guided by the internal spirit, and more from within us we're able then to deal with the situations going on the outside of us. So because, I would suggest, we have been willing to follow the Spirit within us, we've learned to do the right things, and these right things will help us to do even more. So my suggestion today here for each one of us is that hopefully just more and more we will start tithing to ourselves, that we will be taking the time to take care of ourselves physically, mentally, and spiritually. And so what I'm going to suggest to you is that there are 3 things that have occurred in taking the time to do this for ourselves. And my encouragement, of course, is as we continue to do this, that we might be able to see even greater growth. So just kind of see how these 3 things fit. Let me just suggest, first of all, the first of these 3 advantages of tithing is the following. Would you not say, just right now, the fact is that each one of us truly has changed in many ways. So that because we have taken some time for ourselves, I think it's been very helpful to us. I think we could say that we are calmer. We're probably less inclined to get upset. Would you not say you feel more joy in your life? Just being honest, you just feel more joy in your life. And less do the dramas of life overtake us. It's those things from the outside, in a sense. We're just not jumping into other people's mud puddles. And would you not say that you are more confident? You kind of feel like you know what you're doing in life. And not only do you feel that confidence within you, but you have a sense of enthusiasm for what you're doing. Less and less are you running in circles. It's kind of like what I like to say, you're learning to understand the idea or the notion of the rocking horse. We know that motion is not necessarily movement. You've come to understand that your motion sometimes is really not movement. And you're moving much more to movement rather than simply going in circles and rocking back and forth. You've changed. You've made a difference in your life. And as you continue to do so, by and large, as you continue to take that time for yourself, you're going to grow even more and more and more. But then it's the second notion of tithing that's very interesting, at least to me. I think we could say that probably each one of us in our tithing, we really now are moving irreversibly into the future. We're not going to go back to where we were. We know that some additional work needs to be done. We understand that. We understand that each one of us is in a process of change, but for the most part, we're not going to revert back to where we were. But this then becomes the interesting thing. When you start looking at things in a particular way, you begin to understand that, well, since I've changed some of the easier things in my life to change, my life has gotten better. I'm happier, more content, and so on. So, if you had that thought in mind, how about this thought then? What about if I continue to work on those things in my life that I really do need to improve on? If I continue to work on those things that I need to improve on, would not we have the same results? In other words, you've worked well with the easy stuff and your life has gotten better. If you continue to work with the more difficult things, would it not be clear to you that your life would become even better? For most of us, we like to hang on to one or two of these things. I usually say you put them in your back pocket. At one time they were helpful to you maybe. Sometimes maybe they were compensations. But now you realize that it's time to progress beyond even those things. And this has been my experience. When you take the time to tithe to yourself, when you take the time to look more clearly at those things, which in the past, in a sense, have kind of kept us a little imprisoned, will even open into greater possibilities. It just makes sense. If you've changed in little things that have made you better, why not change in bigger things to give yourself greater joy? That's pretty important. The third thing I would suggest you concerning tithing that I think is really important anyways, is that as we continue to grow and develop and so on, you start saying to yourself, well, is it just about change? Am I just simply changing things from this to that? And while that's a part of it, you also begin to realize that there's a third advantage of tithing to yourself, of taking the time for your physical, mental, spiritual growth. And that third advantage is, it's been my experience in life that the most important thing for each one of us is not to change our old habits, but rather to develop the soul expansion that is within us. It's expanding your soul that will give you the greater joys of life. For most of us, it was always changing your habits. Go from this to that. Rather than doing the wrong thing, do the right thing. But very seldom do we really understand that it's learning to expand your soul that gives you the greatest opportunity for growth and development. And that's what I want to encourage you, to expand the soul that is within you, which will give you that greatest possibility. So I'm going to suggest just two things that might be helpful to you. My greatest surprise in life, my greatest surprise for myself personally, was once I thought, well, I'm finally getting over my bad habits, there must not be too much more to go. And then I began to realize, oh my gosh, I was just starting. I was just starting getting over what no longer fit. It was the soul expansion that was the biggest surprise. So many times we feel, well, life can't get any better. I just want to tell you, it will. It will. It will get better because you're getting better. It will get better because there's an endless expansion of the soul. And that shift from seeing yourself just as a limited human, not just to a nicer human, but to an eternal soul, is just such a beautiful, beautiful experience of life. And as we continue to do that, as we expand from within, creating our own futures, that's one of the most important things we could ever possibly have in life. And the second thing I would just suggest to you, just kind of a surprise. Just kind of a surprise. Every time you expand from within, Every time you seem to expand from within yourself, whenever you tithe to yourself, it just seems like you become better for everyone else. It's just an interesting thing. Every time you expand from within, you also, in a sense, bring forth your best in relationship to others. You see people differently, you feel differently towards them, and you really understand that the better that I become, the better others become as well. Barbara Marx Hubbard used to say, the most important thing we could possibly do is to show up for other people in our soul self. Because when you show up in your soul self, not only are you shining brightly, but then you also assist others to do the same. I think these two notions of soul expansion for oneself and then for the good of others, that to me is the great surprise. It's one thing to clean up your act, but it's quite another to expand your soul. So in conclusion, what I would just want to suggest to you is that I think it's such an important thing for each one of us, in a sense, to be able to tithe, to move ourselves into a greater understanding of life. And I'd like to conclude with this little poem. This lovely lady at our nursing home, at the Park Vista Center in Youngstown, the senior center there, she always has this little poem, and I just think it's kind of the coolest little thing. Patty, I know you know it well, but when it comes to tithing about yourself, I think this is just the greatest little poem. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until the good becomes better and the better best. I think that's the formula for us. Good, better, best. Never let it rest until the good becomes better and the better best. Tithing to yourself. So very important. Let me now take you into meditation. It's a joy to bring you into meditation, and let's set that intention first of all, that each one of us realize the importance of our own personal growth and development. Let us set as our intention the tithing to oneself. Fully commit yourself to this meditation. And let us begin our meditation as we are wont to do by simply focusing on the breath, breathing in and breathing out, nothing forced, but not lackadaisical either, just giving your attention to the breath coming in and the breath going out. Please begin. And just to assist you as you focus, when you inhale, just say to yourself the word in. When you exhale, the word out. In and out according to your natural breathing rhythm. Please continue. And just notice how calm you're beginning to feel. Just that inner peace begins to take over as the breath starts resonating with your body rhythm. Let me now suggest that you just take your hand and place it again over your heart and your lungs. And as you do so, just feel the breath coming in. Feel the movement of your lungs expanding. And then the breath, as it leaves the body, feel your lungs deflating. Feel the in, feel the out. Please continue. You may put your hand back on your lap. And as you do so, I'm going to ask you simply to notice something. Would you just notice how calm you feel? Would you just notice your sense of peace? And would you say to yourself, I like myself this way. I like myself this way. Now would you simply notice what you have done? You have stopped the busyness and you have begun to tithe to yourself. Would you notice again how good this tithing feels? This is me. This is the me that I want to be. Would you also notice how loving you feel? Just how loving you feel right now. Notice this. And would you not say that, well, this is the way I'd like to be with everyone all day long? Do you see what is happening? When you take the time to sharpen your saw. When you tithe to yourself. Are you not experiencing the elevation in spirit? Make no mistake, your good has become better. You've changed. You notice the differences. Calmer, happier, stronger, more understanding. And your better is continually in the process of becoming better. Deep-seated habits you're finally getting rid of them. They just don't fit anymore. But now you're in the process of your better becoming your best. Soul expansion. Please tithe to your self. Let's now enjoyably conclude our meditation by bringing our soul energy back into this room, and let it swirl around each one of us here today. Let it just swirl around us, embracing each one of us. And then with this larger energy around us, bring that energy right into your body, into your physicality. Let it just fill every nook and cranny from head to toe. And then I'm going to ask you to notice something when you do this. Would you just notice how good you feel? Soul-centered in a body. Soul-centered in a body. And just when you're ready now, just gently breathe your eyes open and allow your soul goodness to shine through. Namaste.